Now there's this idea of multiverses, where you've got an infinite number of universes, each one with its own set of physical constants, its own gravitational constant. If it has gravity, it may have other forces, its own strong force, its own weak force, and so on. And in only some subset of those universes can life evolve, can stars form, planets form, life evolve, carbon atoms that allow DNA to replicate. We happen to be in one of those. So then we look at our universe and say, well, this universe must have been created by a God to have so finely, perfectly tuned everything for life. But that's the only universe that we can be in. So there's something called the anthropic principle that says you can only observe what's observable. Now, I look at both of those ideas, how the Big Bang started. You know, you've got an idea of God or you've got an idea of multiverses. And in a way, they're equally scientific or unscientific. That's within that, I think you said partially overlapping, POMA. That's in that narrow boundary. It's like, well, okay, that's maybe where we should have the demilitarized zone. Each one of those is equally good or equally bad. I happen to find the multiverse idea a little more appealing because it seems naturalistic to me, but in a sense, it's not observable, even in principle. It can't be proven or disproven, so it's more like God.
That makes it less like God. But may I say something about this? You see, what's at the back of this is a set of false alternatives. You started off by saying God created or there's a Big Bang. But the Big Bang is simply saying there was a beginning. Genesis is spelling it out that the cause of that beginning is an intelligent God. There's absolutely no conflict there whatsoever. We're having two different descriptions of exactly the same thing. That's point number one. Point number two, the multiverse theory has a very interesting provenance. Max Tegmark at Princeton said there's either a multiverse or there's a creator. What was that a reaction to? The fine-tuning. But he got it wrong, because if there is a God, he can create as many universes as he likes. The existence, and I say that advisedly, one of Stephen Hawking's collaborators is the physicist Don Page in Canada, and Don wrote 8 or 9 papers with him. And when I wrote my book, God and Stephen Hawking, on this very thing, I wrote to Don. Now, Don is a Christian, believes in the multiverse. And he says there's absolutely no conflict in his mind between the two. So we mustn't use multiverse versus God. Secondly, I feel that your idea, and it's true, I was taught quantum mechanics by John Polkinghorne, and I ought to admit that because he's allergic to the multiverse. And so is Roger Penrose, increasingly, because he says it's, well, I quote, it's what you say when you haven't got a theory. It's an excuse for a theory. So the audience need to understand that there's a huge amount of debate for the reason that you gave. There's no accessibility. But I believe there's every accessibility to God, and there's every evidence for his existence. And that's why I would massively prefer, but not prefer. Preference is an emotional term. I believe in a God. There may or may not be a multiplicity of universes. In fact, the Bible hints that this may not be the only one. So it's not even a difficulty. But the evidence that there is a God, the kind that I've already mentioned, and a whole lot more, because a lot of my evidence for the existence of God comes from my Christianity, not simply from my theism, that God has revealed himself. So I wouldn't put them in the same category intellectually at all, although I'm very interested in the ways people try to avoid believing in a creator.